All right, so it's noon, so I think we're going to get started and more people can jump on as they get into our Zoom session. So welcome to all of you who have taken the time to join us virtually today. My name is Amy Vanderploeg. I'm the Director of Sales for Porter Hills. And today we are talking about how to navigate senior living options. We do have a wide variety of those of you who have joined us today, which means some of you have knowledge about Porter Hills Village, some of you don't. Some of you are here to learn for yourselves. Others of you are on the webinar today to learn for someone else, a parent or a friend or other loved one. So it's a mixed group, and hopefully what I covered today answers the majority of your questions, but if not, or if you think of questions as we go through today, at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A button icon that you can click on and type in your question. And then at the end of the presentation, Joy will read those questions and she and I will answer them. So you can type your question in throughout the presentation. You don't have to wait until the end. It'll stay right there and then we'll get to it. So what I'd like to do first is just give you an overview of Porter Hills as an organization. For those of you who are fairly new to researching retirement communities, Porter Hills has been serving seniors now for over 50 years. We are a not-for-profit organization, and we offer the full continuum of care. And today we're going to specifically talk about the Porter Hills Village campus, which is pictured here. It's our campus on East Fulton Street, and that is the campus that has the full continuum of care on it. A couple of years ago, we affiliated with United Methodist Retirement Communities of Southeastern Michigan. So we came together with UMRC, and that coming together has created the second largest provider of senior services and senior living in Michigan. So that has really allowed us to be able to expand what we offer to seniors and to come together in a way that will benefit the entire state of Michigan. So I've used this term now twice, continuing care retirement community. Sometimes you will hear the acronym CCRC. What does that actually mean? So it means that the residents have access to multiple levels of care, all within our organization. But there's a new term that's being used, and I feel like it's a better term, and that is life plan community. So why do we use that term, life plan, instead of continuing care? Well, it's really because it's residents are planning for the rest of their life when choosing to reside in the type of community that Porter Hills Village is. And it really puts the focus more on wellness and less on care, because it better reflects those of you in the audience who are looking at this for yourselves, who feel like, you know, you're still vibrant, you're looking for an active lifestyle with a focus on health and wellness. And that's why we feel that life plan community, and this is an industry-wide change, if you will, that we're talking more in terms of that, but it still includes and encompasses that continuum of care should your needs change in the future. So to start out today, I want to highlight a study that was done some years ago now by the MacArthur Foundation. And it was a research network on successful aging. The two primary researchers were Dr. Jack Rowe and Dr. Robert Kahn. They wanted to study older adults over a long period of time to see what the differences were between seniors who seemed to age successfully and those who did not, basically. And from that study, a book was written by Dr. Roger Landry called Live Long, Die Short. And I love that name because it really talks about living a long, high quality life and not having that slow decline toward death that we usually see. So what I want to show you is a graph, which is an outcome of the study on successful aging. And what you see on this graph along the bottom is a person's age, basically from birth until death. And then you also see their percent of functioning. So as you can imagine on this graph, when we are very young and we're in our early years and then in our teens and then in our 20s and 30s, we are on our way up to 100% functioning. And that goes on for several decades. And then if you look at the dark blue line, you start to see this decline. And on the graph here, it identifies that downward slope as the usual aging course. But the dotted line is showing the other cohort group in this study that was living a quote unquote successfully aging lifestyle. And that dotted line goes across for several more decades before then it comes to an end. So the study, of course, wanted to know what is the difference? What's the difference between that solid blue declining line and that dotted line? And what the study found was that your aging journey is mostly determined by your lifestyle. So that is both frightening and exciting. It's frightening because if our aging journey is determined mostly by our lifestyle, that means that for the most part, it is within our control. And so that to me then is exciting. That means there are things, specific things that we can do to age more successfully. Well, what are those things? And that was the thesis then of the research study that was done. So there were 4 strong indicators of what's needed for successful aging. The first is a physically active and a mentally stimulating lifestyle. This should not be a surprise to anyone because we know this. We hear this all the time on the news. We read about it, and our doctors tell us we need to exercise. We need to move more. We need to keep our brain engaged. The second thing the study found was that strong social engagement is also extremely important. Now, this for me personally was a bit of an aha moment. And I think now having, we're 18 months into the COVID pandemic, I think all of us have a much better understanding of the detriments of isolation. Because all last year, when none of us could get together with our families and couldn't see our grandchildren, and many of us spent the holidays basically alone, we know how that felt. It felt terrible. It was depressing. It was isolating. We could see in ourselves, we could see in others that isolation is detrimental to a person's health. And so now, thinking that strong social engagement is important is not a stretch because we saw the reverse of that last year. And strong social engagement is the thing that when we're trying to stay in our own home, when we say, I don't want to leave my home, I want to stay here as long as I can, many times the socialization is the piece that really suffers. And that's what we saw last year during the pandemic, when we were not able to go out and be around others, even if it was, going to the symphony or going to a movie or going to the library. So not necessarily being with family members or, specific friends, but even just in a group setting with others, we couldn't do that. Well, that kind of isolation can also happen outside of a pandemic. It can happen when we are just alone in our homes and are now maybe unable to get out because we can't drive anymore or something like that. So you can see where that can quickly become a problem. The third thing that this study found was that purpose and meaning in life is extremely important for successful aging. So having a reason to get up in the morning, having plans that are made and plans that you need to keep because other people are expecting you. This could also mean, spirituality, religion. That's purpose and meaning. That's a very important part of what's needed for successful aging. And then the fourth thing that the study identified, and this is the one where I feel it really pulls it all together, is living in an environment that supports this lifestyle. So basically an environment that supports these other three things that we just talked about. And again, going back to staying in our own home as long as we can, these other three things on the list here become more and more difficult. So then that environment is not necessarily supporting the successful aging lifestyle. So I start with all of this because now on this next slide, we want to highlight what does any of that look like in community life? Because if the opposite of staying home alone in our house is moving to a community like Porter Hills Village, what does that look like? Because I'm guessing that all of you in this audience have never lived in a retirement community before. Maybe you don't even know anyone that has. And so this slide shows kind of the what does it look like? What does a day in the life look like of residents in community? Well, we talk a lot about wellness, the term wellness. And really what that is referring to is these 6 different dimensions that all of us experience and all of us need in our lives in order to be well. So emotional wellness, what does that mean? What does that look like in community? Well, it really means a support network, having others around you to support you in your emotional needs. Many of you, I'm guessing, are getting that kind of support now from family and friends, maybe from your church or synagogue. Again, as we age, sometimes those support networks get harder to obtain or be part of. When you live in community, that support is right here. There are engaging activities, there are support groups that residents can be a part of. So there's just a whole network right within the community. There's spiritual wellness, worship services, service projects, community life. These are things that we pay close attention to at Porter Hills Village. So as an example, we have several chaplains on our staff. They provide a number of different spiritual type opportunities for residents, everything from Vesper services, communion services, to Bible study and prayer groups and support groups. Then there's social wellness, and we've already talked about the importance of that. So, being involved in, say, community dining. Dining for us at Porter Hills Village is really viewed as a social opportunity as much as it is just, good nutrition, but it's an opportunity to be with others that live in the community and share in that. There's physical wellness, which is typically what we think of when we think of wellness, and that's, exercise classes and our indoor swimming pool and strength training and balance, things like that. All of that is right here within the community. Then there's intellectual wellness. So this is that, brain stimulation, keeping your brain engaged. So lifelong learning programs, bringing in outside speakers on, any number of topics from history to science to art, whatever it is. So learning new things. And then occupational wellness, and that's kind of a strange term, occupation, but it really means interest groups and skills sharing, So if you have an interest in knitting and you're going to be part of the knitting group, or you're interested in woodworking and you like to be in the wood shop, or if you want to volunteer either within our community or out in the greater community, those opportunities are available to you as a resident. So this is kind of a big picture of just what life is like in community. And hopefully you can see that we are very purposeful in our planning of the type of engagement and activities that we offer to our residents, because we want to make sure that we are meeting all of these 6 different dimensions. So now I want to talk about what is available at Porter Hills Village. And again, going back to what I said at the beginning, where I know our group today, those of you who are online with us, there's a mix, of people, mix of reasons why you're part of this webinar today, mix of interests in the different areas. So I'd like to go through each one of those and kind of talk about what we have to offer, what that would look like for you, that kind of thing. So we're going to start with independent living. On our Porter Hills Village campus, we have what we refer to as garden apartments, and then we have our townhomes. And independent living at Porter Hills is with what is called a life lease. So what does that mean, a life lease? Well, it assures a lifetime right of occupancy on the village campus, and it gives you priority access to higher levels of care. So I would say the number one reason why people choose to move to Porter Hills Village is because they say, I want to know that if I need more care in the future, it's going to be available for me right here at the village on this campus. And that is very much true. And that's what priority access means to those higher levels of care. The life lease also gives our residents shared use of common areas. And we'll talk a little bit more about what those common areas are, but even on the previous slide where I was talking about, fitness, exercise classes, the indoor pool, the wood shop, those are all called common areas. And as a resident, you have access to all of those. And so entering into a life lease allows that access for you. Financially, independent living at Porter Hills has what's referred to as a refundable entrance fee. Well, what is an entrance fee? That is that upfront payment. Sometimes it's called a buy-in that our residents pay when they move into either our garden apartments or our townhomes. So that entrance fee helps to make the services and the amenities available at a more reasonable cost. And this is one of the big differences between moving into an entrance fee community versus a straight rental community. There are many other differences, but financially speaking, a rental independent living community is going to have a much higher monthly rent than Porter Hills Village when you're paying an entrance fee, because that entrance fee, again, helps to make the services and the amenities available at a more reasonable cost. That entrance fee also helps you as the resident with estate planning and asset preservation. Well, why is that? Because we have 2 refund options. We have a 50% refundable option and a 65% refundable option. So what does that mean? That means that when you pay, and let's just use round numbers. So if your entrance fee was $300,000, and that's a little higher than what the average entrance fee is, but for ease of numbers, if you paid an entrance fee at $300,000 and you chose the 50% refundable option, that means that when you leave that apartment or townhome, half of that $300,000, so $150,000, is going to be returned to you or to your estate. So that's what it means that it's helps with asset preservation or estate planning, both. Then in addition to the refundable entrance fee, you have an all-inclusive monthly service fee. That monthly service fee covers all of your utilities, including your cable TV and internet. It includes biweekly housekeeping, all of those engagement opportunities that I was talking about, whether it's the book club or the wood shop or a movie or a speaker, all of those things are included, as well as what we call our Martindale Wellness Center, where the indoor pool is and the fitness center. So you're paying one monthly service fee and it covers all of those things. The only thing that is not included in our monthly service fee at Porter Hills Village in independent living are meals. Meal options are certainly available, but it's optional. So you're not forced into a meal plan. You certainly can be part of a meal plan, or you can just go and dine now and then when you want to, but it's not something that is automatically included. So in speaking about independent living, then what are the options as far as the continuum of care at Porter Hills? So I'm first going to describe it as an independent living resident, and then we're going to move into each one of those different levels of care and talk about that. So as an independent living resident, you have the same options as you do right now living in your own home. So you can bring home care services into your apartment or your townhome that would be provided by an outside agency. So you could hire an agency to provide home care to come into your apartment in independent living. That's fine. You could have in-home help from family or friends. So maybe you have a granddaughter that would be available and interested in coming to provide some help for you. That's fine as well. But you have the added benefit of access to the Porter Hills continuum of services. And what is that? The first very large and important piece of that is access to our transition coordinator. So this is a role in our organization. It's a social worker who communicates with you, your family, your doctors, and really advocates for your needs. So sometimes we refer to this role as a navigator, someone who is there to facilitate and help you make informed decisions about health changes or an upcoming surgery, anything to do with your well-being. And this person provides support by being the point person during a change in health status. This service is invaluable for not just residents, but also their families as they are trying to figure out, okay, we're starting to see some changes in our parent, but we don't really know, what does that mean? What does the next step look like? Our transition coordinator can help you through that and can make suggestions. Why don't we try home care and see how that goes, up until talking about an actual transition to a higher level. So then what are those higher levels? What is that continuum? What does that look like at Porter Hills Village? So there are several options or steps, if you will. So the first is something called enhanced independent living. And on the following slides, I'm going to get into more detail about that. So it's independent living, but with more supportive services. Then there's assisted living. We also have memory care on our campus here. And finally, we have skilled nursing in our health and rehab center on the Porter Hills Village campus. We also have skilled nursing in our greenhouse homes, which are on the Cook Valley campus. So now let's go through each one of these individually to just give you a little bit more information about what it is. So let's start with enhanced independent living, which is here in our village center. So for any of you who have been on our campus, the main middle part of our big building is referred to as the Village Center. Enhanced independent living has a monthly fee only. There is no entrance fee. There is no community fee. You just pay the monthly fee for enhanced independent living. But there are some differences here than in the garden apartments. So it's an independent lifestyle, but with extra services. So housekeeping services, linen service, those things are included, as well as 3 chef-prepared meals per day. So right away you can see, okay, so this is much more supportive than being in the garden apartments in true independent living, where you are responsible for your own meal preparation and things like that. Here, you have that taken care of for you. And so it frees up the residents in enhanced independent living to really pursue the other things that they have an interest in, whether it's cultural, educational, spiritual programming. There's a full calendar of events every day. These are planned things where residents come together and participate in various activities. Our enhanced independent living residents also have access to our on-site residential healthcare services. Now, this is also true for independent living residents, but even more so for enhanced living residents. We also have transportation available. This is scheduled transportation for off-campus outings and grocery shopping. So if a resident in enhanced independent living no longer drives, they have access to transportation that is scheduled for any outings off campus or for grocery shopping. Next, we have our catered assisted living and memory support. So this is really resident-focused approach to service. So we talk about catered assisted living because the approach is that the services are catered to the needs of the resident, the individual resident, whatever it is that they need to be able to thrive at Porter Hills Village is what is provided for them. It's a household model. So we, in catered assisted living and in memory support, we have what we call neighborhoods. So these are smaller areas where residents live, and they have the same care team every day in that neighborhood. So it really encourages the residents to build relationships with their care team. And it also allows the care team to really get to know that resident and what their specific needs are, so they can anticipate what their needs are. Included services in assisted living and memory support are things like medication monitoring and assistance, vital sign monitoring, laundry and linen service and housekeeping, bathing, dressing, personal care service. So these are things that are often referred to as ADLs, activities of daily living. In independent living, residents are able to do these things for themselves, but in assisted living and memory support, the residents need some assistance with that. Maybe it's just a matter of queuing. Maybe it's not necessarily hands-on help, or it could be, but that is available. There are also household living rooms for neighborhood engagement. So there are specific areas where the residents come together for social opportunities or activities. In these living room areas, residents also have access to beverages and snacks. But again, all 3 meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, are included for residents. And then unique, I believe, to Porter Hills Village is that every apartment has either a private courtyard or balcony space. So outdoor living space is something that many communities don't have when you get into assisted living and memory care. And our campus does provide that. So residents can still experience the outdoors right from their apartment. So when you think about all of these different options, it really can get confusing. And there really are a number of options. So on this slide, these are some of the 5 main things that we hear when we are talking with either the potential resident themselves or their adult children. And the first one is maybe the biggest thing that we hear is that people tell us, well, I just want to stay home. I want to stay in my house as long as I can. I'm happy here. And I don't think that I'm ever going to need any help. This is also known as just burying your head in the sand. So one step above that is people say, well, I'm going to stay in my house as long as I can. But, if I need help, I'll bring it in if and when I need it. Because just a couple slides ago, I said, you right now in your own homes, you can bring home care in. If any of you are currently doing that or trying to line that up, you may have found what is a problem, frankly, in the entire industry right now. And that is that home care agencies are really struggling with staffing, as is every other business in the country. But it makes it very challenging when you're trying to line up home care services, either for yourself or for a loved one, when the agency is telling you that they just don't have the staff to provide that care. They have no one who can come. Or they promise you that they have someone to come and then that person doesn't show up. There are a lot of pitfalls with trying to bring care into your home. The third option, and usually this one is not something that people on either side of this want to do, but you could move in with your kids, or your kids could move in with you if you need help. We do have people who say that that is their long-term plan. Well, if I need help, I'm just going to move in with my kids. Again, there's always a flip side to this. If you think about, if you are listening today and you are here trying to learn for yourself, if you think about your adult children, my guess is that they have very busy lives. Maybe they have children of their own and are working, maybe working full time. And so their household is very busy when everyone's home, and then very lonely when everybody leaves in the morning to go to work or school. And so thinking that moving in with an adult child or a family member is going to solve all the issues, again, usually doesn't work the way that we think it's going to. Another option is to say, well, I will make a change when I need it. I will move to assisted living at the point that I get when I am starting to need care, or I'll just wait until I need to go to a nursing home. Again, oftentimes this waiting for this option doesn't go as smoothly as it might seem. And we receive many, many phone calls of the nature that I call code red, which means there is a crisis. And, we get a call from an adult daughter who says, my mom fell, she broke her hip. She went to the hospital, had a hip replacement. Now she's in rehab, but the doctor is telling us that she should not go back home and live alone. And we don't know what to do. Those are crisis phone calls. There's no planning there. The discharge planner at the hospital or the rehab center is literally handing you a list of places and saying, you better start calling these folks and see who can take your mom. As you can imagine, that is not a fun way to think about or make a decision as far as moving somewhere. No one is happy in a situation like that. And so what we advocate for, of course, but I want to talk about why we advocate for this, is number 5. I will make a change now when I can fully plan for my future. Waiting for a crisis means you're waiting until the stress is at the highest level for everyone, not just you as the potential resident, but also your family. You're scrambling. You don't have time to really research. You don't have time to plan. You don't have time to find the place that's going to be the best fit. And we have seen these things play out over and over, which is why, we bring this up. So now, switching again gears a little bit, I want to just show you some pictures since we're not on site, you're not here today. So I want you to see, what does community living really look like? Well, these two pictures are great examples of things that we talk about as far as engagement opportunities for our residents, whether it's independent living, enhanced independent living, or assisted living. These are the types of activities that go on. So in the top right, you see a group of ladies who are in a watercolor painting class. My guess is that most of those ladies in this picture have never done this before, but these are the kind of opportunities that are presented. And they're a lot of fun, and they're also educational. You're learning a new skill. In the left-hand picture is one of our residents in the woodworking shop. We have a marvelous large wood shop over in the garden apartment area that any resident has access to. And many of our residents were woodworkers before. And so they've brought their own tools and they work on their own projects, or they work on projects for the community, or they build things that can be sold in a craft show or something like that. So this is just an example of a variety of different opportunities under the heading of arts and crafts. I mentioned before the knitting group. There's a lot of different hands-on arts and crafts type things that go on in our community. Fitness, we talked about this before, the indoor swimming pool. So we offer aqua aerobics classes, also time for residents to just come and do their own activities and exercise in the swimming pool. We offer exercise classes from yoga, as you can see, strength training, balance. The bottom picture is of the bocce court on our brand new rooftop garden. So this is a large outdoor space that opened last year during COVID, and really this summer we were able to take full advantage of it. And so we have bocce up there, we have a putting green, there's a cutting garden with flowers growing, and residents can go and cut them to make a bouquet. There's outdoor dining space with a grill and a fireplace. So lots of opportunities on the entire campus for outdoor activity and physical fitness, whether it's walking, a formal exercise class, weight training, cardiovascular equipment, or the swimming pool. This picture highlights our Generations Daycare, which is on site here at Porter Hills Village. This is something that we are very proud of, and it's very unique to Porter Hills. The YMCA has a daycare center right here on our campus. And that means that daily there are children from infants to, I think, about 5 years old who are every day in daycare on our campus. And what this allows is a lot of intergenerational programming between our residents and the children. And it really becomes a highlight for our residents who are interested in either reading to the kids or helping them with a project, maybe mentoring the students, and they get to know them because the kids are coming to the daycare year after year until they are old enough to go off to school. And our residents see these children on a regular basis over several years, and they really get to know them. The children will perform for our residents, or like Halloween is coming up, so they do a Halloween parade outside where the kids are all dressed up and they parade through the streets of our campus, and the residents are outside watching. It just presents a number of really great opportunities for, like I said, that intergenerational programming. So now I've given you a pretty broad overview of Porter Hills Village. So what would be next steps? As I said on the webinar today, is a mix of folks who are looking for themselves or looking for someone else. Also a mix, of course, of people who are interested in independent living, people who are looking at possibly assisted living or memory care. So the most important thing is to really meet with a sales counselor, because this is great, to get an overview of what we have to offer, but each one of you has a unique situation, a unique time frame. You have, your own specific financial resources, and that's where, when you meet with a sales counselor, you can really talk about what is it that you're looking for, what is it that your needs are, and how can we help you to find the best fit. So the three sales counselors, Joy Zelenak is the sales counselor for enhanced independent living, assisted living, and memory support. And then Sarah Van Steenkist and Dave Hendrickson, both are sales counselors for independent living for Porter Hills Village, and also for Cook Valley Estates, which today's session was not focusing on that. We wanted to focus today on the Village campus. Joining our priority waiting list is another option, and that's primarily for independent living. That's where we really do have waiting lists on both campuses. So lots of next steps, but really coming to see what we have to offer. So you've seen some pictures today, but coming to see what we have to offer, and then also finding out what are the exact costs in each of these different areas would be a very good suggestion for a next step. So now I'd like to get to questions that you have, and I do see on the screen that we have some questions, but I'm going to have Joy read those questions, and then one of us will answer those. So Joy, what do we have?
All right, so our first question is whether or not we have apartments available now, and what types do we currently have?
So that's a great question. The short answer is it depends, but what does it depend on? It depends on what area of the campus you're looking at. So let's start with independent living. Our garden apartments and our townhomes, that's where we have a waiting list. So as apartments open up, which they do, we go to our waiting list and start reaching out to people. So for independent living, you would need to be on the waiting list to be called when an apartment opens up. In our enhanced independent living, we have current availability. So these are the rental type smaller apartments in the village center. We have current availability. In assisted living and memory care, those two areas change frequently. And so that is something, we can have spaces available one day and then the next day they're gone, just because the process with assisted living and memory care, because it's much more need-based, can change very rapidly. So that in those particular areas, you would specifically want to talk to Joy about availability there.
Okay, next up, someone wants to know if they could move their dog in with them.
Absolutely, we are pet friendly. Dogs and cats are allowed. The weight limit for dogs, I believe, is 50 pounds.
Okay, and we have someone else that asked, with COVID, what are we doing with that if someone can't have the vaccine?
So any of you who were part of our series of virtual presentations over the past year and a half know that we've talked a lot about COVID. It has ebbed and flowed, of course, as many of you know. So I will talk about our current situation, if you will. So we offered the vaccine to all of our residents and team members at the beginning of this year, and the majority of residents got the vaccine, 2 doses. We know now that the booster shot is approved and is going to be coming. We will offer that as well. But in independent living, it is not mandatory that residents have the vaccine. So if someone is not able to get it, that doesn't mean they cannot move here. We are currently still or I should say again, wearing masks anytime we are indoors, and that goes for all residents, all visitors, all team members. There was a short period of time this summer where we did not need to wear masks, but then with the resurgence in the fall, we went back to having to wear masks again. We have an entire infection control team who is dedicated to nothing but watching what's going on with COVID and communicating to residents and team members and visitors what the status is. Our communities have all fared very well for the entire pandemic, year and a half. Have we had positive cases? Yes, we have, but not to the outbreak extent that we were seeing on the news a year ago. We now know exactly what we need to do. If someone tests positive, we have so much more knowledge about COVID now. So we feel very confident in how we handle all of that. So I'm hoping that this was, what you were looking for in terms of an answer.
Okay, next question is, do we offer trial stays for people that aren't ready to move?
So that is a great question. I'll tell you where we have 2 options for trial stays. So we have, first of all, what's called a respite stay, which is probably not necessarily a trial stay. It's if someone has had a surgery or maybe they had rehab because of a hip replacement and they're not quite ready to go home, but that certainly is the goal, that they're going to be strong enough to go home. Someone can come here for a respite stay in assisted living for a week or 2 or sometimes a month until they're strong enough to go home. So that's one option. The second option is what we call Weather the Winter program. This would definitely be considered a trial stay. It's a 3-month stay, again, in assisted living, where everything is provided for you, including the furnishings in the apartment. And it's really to provide you with the needs during the winter months when maybe it's much more difficult for you to get out and meet those needs, or for others to come in. So that would also be considered a trial stay.
Okay, great. And I'm on my last question, unless we see more posted. So the last question is, what types of wellness activities can I expect?
So if you remember back to the photos that I had, and even that screen that showed the different types of wellness, whether it's social wellness, spiritual, educational, all of those things manifest themselves in the engagement opportunities that we offer. So every month our residents get a newsletter, and in that newsletter it's just full of all the opportunities. So maybe it's, joining others to watch a movie and have popcorn. Maybe it's yesterday there was a trip off campus, a color tour. So residents got on the bus and they did a color tour around the greater Grand Rapids area. Maybe it's coming to happy hour or going to hear a speaker. Maybe it's joining the aqua aerobics class or the yoga class. So all of those types of things are classified as wellness opportunities for residents. And it doesn't matter what area of our campus you live in, whether it's independent living, enhanced independent, assisted living, memory care, even in skilled nursing. We are very purposeful in providing these types of wellness engagement opportunities for our residents.
Okay, and I haven't seen any more questions posted, so that's the end of those.
All right. Well, we thank you all so much for joining us today. We wanted to give this virtual option because we know not everybody can come in person, or maybe you're not yet comfortable coming in person. So we appreciate you joining us today. As I said before, I think the next step would really be talking with one of the sales counselors over the phone, coming in person, whatever that might be, to really get down to more detailed information, but also to find out what it is that all of you are looking for. That's where it starts. So thank you so much for being part of this today. We look forward to seeing you in person very soon. Thank you.